Hello again. I've decided to include a quick video using another of my own drawings as an example, highlighting all the fundamental concepts that I've covered throughout this basic series. So here we have a character concept from a personal project that I've been working on, and she's sort of that feral Princess Mononoke type, except she hangs out with hyenas instead of wolves. And this is the image that I used as reference, which seems like a sensible place to start. So let's break it down. First, I'm going to identify the three major masses of this figure, and we can see the torso and pelvis overlapping with one another. The shoulder and hip joints are about parallel with each other, so no twisting of the torso to worry about. Her head is facing in a separate direction. Her arms are stretched out in front and supporting the upper half of her body. One leg is coming forward while the other is going back in space. Unfortunately, I no longer have the rough layers for this particular drawing, but keeping the elements of this pose in mind, my 3D mannequin would have looked something like this, although it wouldn't have been nearly this clean when I originally drew it. I can then use the position of the hands and feet to place down some perspective lines, and can then use those to figure out where the horizon is, which helps to make sure everything is lining up correctly. This mannequin stage is also where I would widen my field of vision by zooming out on my canvas to make sure none of the proportions look off. Assuming that's the case, I can then continue building up the drawing. But again, this is a much cleaner version of what my rough would have looked like. I won't get too into anatomy here, as that sort of thing will be covered in more detail in future videos, but I can point out some of the major muscle groups that are involved in this drawing. There's the trapezius, which is a large back muscle that wraps around the neck and connects into the deltoids. There's also the brachioradialis muscles, which connect the upper and lower arm. And I should also mention the breasts, which aren't made of muscle, but are rather pockets of fat that sit over top of the ribcage, which means they're affected by gravity. Finally, I can check to see if the silhouette is strong enough and void of any tangents. And from the looks of things, everything overlaps with each other enough to be visually clear. I could also use this as a chance to talk a little bit about color palettes. This character consists primarily of reds and browns to match her hyena friends. The bones also act as a natural highlight to contrast the darkness of the other colors. Even the scars covering her body are lighter than her skin tone, making them more apparent. Lastly, the red paint or blood pattern is desaturated, which it would naturally be anyways if it were just a thin layer, but it's done purposefully so it doesn't overpower the reddish brown of the leather. You may notice I still included the center line on the canine skull. It may not be that apparent on a real skull, but it's a design choice that helps add more form to the drawing. There's also the various lines that hint at the anatomy of the figure. As I mentioned in my video on anatomy, we only need a small amount of lines to communicate it. I've also included lines that imply the kneecap or patella and the edge of her ribcage. Lastly, there's the bits of rope or string holding the leather pads and bone weapons in place, which also help to describe form. That about covers my process for this piece. It's one thing to learn the theory of how to do something, but I find it's easier to retain that knowledge when you see how it's actually applied. And feel free to subscribe for more videos, okay, bye?